Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Any opinions or comments made by any guest are their own, and they do not necessarily reflect any of the presenters or network's opinions.
Just after midnight, late December 1980. Strange lights in the sky, glowing smears among the trees. The woods lit up like fire, electricity filled the air. All hell let loose and rip the show. The silence echoed through the forest to the bone. Unidentified aerial phenomena. Time froze, world stopped, reality changed, lost in state of shock. After encounter and window show.
Hello everyone, this is Johnny Cobb, and you're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, the UK's biggest paranormal radio network, and this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young. You've also just listened to a tune called Remission, composed, produced, and performed by myself and Jerry McCoy. I sing all lead vocals and play all keyboards. Jerry McCoy plays all guitars and bass on our original songs. We invite you to visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/Cobb and McCoy. That's facebook.com/Cobb and McCoy. Thank you so very much. We sincerely hope you enjoy this show.
Hello and welcome to the show. And thank you for that intro, Johnny. And best regards to you and Jerry, and good luck with your music. As you all may have gathered, this is going to be another mainly Rendlesham themed show. With a great guest named Ed Smith. But just before we introduce Ed, I'd just like to say thank you for the few messages and things that I've been getting. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, my email address is davidyoung2qn@yahoo.co.uk. That's David Young 2qn, that's all one word, at yahoo.co.uk. Okay, as I mentioned, we've got another Rendlesham UFO incident themed show today. It's 40 years since the Rendlesham incident, which happened in December 1980. We've got another great guest named Ed Smith, who has a book coming out later this year. Ed has been very supportive and a great friend over the years, so I take great pleasure in welcoming Ed Smith. Hello, Ed. Welcome to the show.
Hello, David. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I consider it an honor. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's an honour to have you on, actually, and I will explain to everyone that Ed has very kindly stepped in. We were going to do the show next week, but we're doing it a week early because the guest that I was going to have on is not very well. So and Ed kindly stepped in very quickly. Well, not stepped in, but sort of stepped in earlier, I should say, because we were going to do it next week anyway.
Thank you, and I certainly hope that your guest next week has a speedy recovery.
Yeah, so do I. I'm sure it will be. But anyway, thank you for that, Ed. I much appreciate that. And now, I think I think we're going to be speaking a lot about Rendlesham on this show, aren't we?
Yes.
Because I think that's kind of your baby and your main interest, and I know you've done a lot of work on it, and like me, it's probably my forte, I suppose. Unfortunately, which I got stuck with a little bit back, but we won't go into that.
No, not at all. You and I have been friends for quite a while now, and I feel very comfortable, and we've always been on a very positive stance. So
yeah, I mean, and that is really the way I see things. I try to be positive, as I know you do, and unfortunately, a lot of negativity has come into the subjects, as you know, along the way.
Very true. I mean, I have friends who have done a lot of research with not only Rendlesham, but the experience that we had. I'm showing my humanity right now. Roswell, New Mexico. So I think the politics that were involved in both of these valid cases is extreme in some areas, but of course we won't be touching on that. There's so much exciting stuff that my research has unveiled over the past 5 years, and I guess I'd say I'd come by it honest because I'm an experiencer myself. My first experience was at age 15, and certainly that was a case where it was a clear evening and starlit evening in Georgia, and my mom was in the laundry room. We were outside. I was watching the Echo satellite orbit the Earth, and that's when the craft showed up out of nowhere and came in, kind of hovered and zigzagged a lot over Dobbins Air Force Base, and then it went right back to space and left. And about all the time I had in about 5 to 8 seconds was to say, Mom, hey, you might want to come here. Well, it's already gone by then. And then I've had a total of 4 experiences, one with a being. So just to cut to the chase on that, I've always been interested. I'm a firm believer that our universe is teeming with life and that we've been visited. There's way too much evidence to prove that.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and so when I got started, when I recently retired, I decided to start writing, and that's where the website came into being, Universal Digest, and then I was approached by quite a number of people. So I have spent the last 6 years conducting a number of case studies, and their time is averaged between anything from 6 months to over 2 years, my last being over 2 years. A lot of cross-referencing. I certainly have a penchant for telling the truth and to be objective. As far as Rendlesham is concerned, David, is really, if it hadn't been for knowing my friend Peter Robbins, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, because my wife is from England, and I asked him one day, hey, I'd like to go see Rendlesham, and I really, had no idea what was going to come about after the fact. And he said, sure, and he gave me a couple of contacts, my friend John Marsden and Dermot Coran, and a number of other people now who are quite incredible, came forward, and John, even in 2016 and 2019, met me at the airport, and has been just a very good friend. Matter of fact, I consider him like a brother from a different mother, because he's very candid, He's very meticulous. He's very intelligent, and he and Dermot and other people that we'll discuss today were having some very incredible experiences, not only on the heels of interviews that we conducted, but since Rendlesham occurred after Christmas in 1980, many more events have occurred too. So
yeah. Well, before Rendlesham, the main event which is 40 years ago now, isn't it?
Yes.
But obviously there's a very busy area anyway.
Oh, it still is. And, I have traveled extensively, both in 2016 and then in 2019, John met me in Norwich and picked me up, and we conducted over 8 days of research, traveled over 1,600 miles, and conducted 6 different interviews. And that's what's going into the anthology on the book that will be published here, hopefully, probably within the next couple of months. So in 2019, that culminated the 5-year research, and actually I had a bit more to continue in a couple of other places, including Las Vegas. So I've met quite a number of people that I find to be very interesting. And yes, the events of Rendlesham are quite real, and a lot of people have witnessed these events at the same time.
Definitely. I mean, what is your favourite part? I don't know, for want of a better word, what's your favourite event? Was it the first night or Colonel Holt's night?
Oh, you mean of Rendlesham's original event?
Yeah, because you've got obviously the first night with Jim Penniston and John Burroughs, which was the night where the craft was supposedly landed in the woods, and Jim supposedly touched it, as I believe he said I believe him when he says he touched it.
That first night, to answer your question, I found to be remarkable. A number of people were involved, both in fire, police, and other areas of law enforcement, as well as the military. Both RAF and Air Force, United States Air Force. A lot of people don't realize that for a number of years, after World War II, the United States Air Force was contracted at RAF Bentwaters when it was quite active. And John, of course, and I have visited there, and Woodbridge, as of right now, is quite active. So, but my take on the first night, yes, something definitely landed, something definitely was there. John Burroughs, from what I have read and known too, had contact with the MOD, realized that there were areas that were not being entertained, so to speak, and actually some things that came up missing. And then Jim Penniston, I believe, yes, we're friends on Facebook, and remarkable book he's written. And I'd say that first night was stupendous. There was a lot going on.
Yeah. So Jim's book is very detailed, isn't it? It's sort of like minute by minute.
Yeah. And of course, Lieutenant Colonel Halt at the time came in on the second night, and I understood that you had a conference, I believe, didn't you?
Yeah, Chuck is a friend of mine. As you know, he's actually stayed in my home.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, he's, I did arrange a conference last year before all this, nonsense. But, I was actually hoping to get him back this year, but, obviously we weren't allowed to, so, unfortunately. In fact, I did a special with him just Christmas. I did a special interview with him. You may get a chance to have a listen to it if you do. It was show number 99. So it was only 2 shows ago. And he sort of, I actually did put out the actual conference, that he did, like the presentation that he did, along with the new interview, so they're all on the same show. But, so I don't know where I'm going. But, it's,
I was following that.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, but, Colonel Holt's night, now you called it the second night. Now there's some controversy there, because some people called it, there was either the second event or the second night. Now, I called it the second night, like you.
Well, actually, thank you. I'd like to be a little bit more clear. When I first began, I promised Peter I wouldn't read his book. so that I wouldn't be influenced one way or the other, and he certainly appreciated it. And when I returned back to America, I wrote my first article about Rendlesham that I determined at the end that definitely was a valid event of crafts and certain things that cannot be explained. What I would like to, if not veering from that, it was the second day that, I think the plaster cast was made, etc., where Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt saw, the imprints into the soil, but perhaps not the actual craft that Jim and John saw. So that I know less about. And so really my research came not only about the extreme interest in what happened at Rendlesham, but what happened afterwards. And not just the 26th, 27th, 28th of December in 1980, those 3 days, where people in various areas saw things that they could not explain. And one of those was my friend John's brother, his older brother David, and we had over a 20-minute telephone interview over there when I was there, and it too was quite interesting. And where he actually saw a craft that headed towards Bentwaters. Without getting too much into that detail, I really wanted to give the audience a little bit more knowledge about what happened with especially John Marsden and Dermot Curran. They were in Skywatch situations with other friends and people over the years, and they saw a number of events that could not be explained. And I would like to make this caveat in a positive nature that both John and Dermot at no point in time ever claimed that there were flying saucers or people saw alien beings. They did see things, but it was in different times that I'll be happy to cover. But as far as Rendlesham itself, the books have already been written. The witnesses and the accountings have already been, completed. My point was not even to be involved. But once I got back from England, my first time in 2016, I went, oops, I'm kind of involved in it now. And, Peter was always very supportive. He's been a good friend for years, and he's his support has meant a lot to me. So I've written and studied and researched a lot more as an ongoing project since 2016. So, there are things that some people even chided, witness accountings, that were even in, newspapers, etc. And without going into names of those, it was really quite a challenge to dig through not only the paperwork, but the witness accountings. And, there's just, I still say that, Rendlesham is active in a lot of different ways. So, would you agree with that, David?
I would, yeah. I've spent a few evenings down there in the dead of night, and I've seen some strange things, yep. I mean, you can walk around, you can take photos. I mean, I don't know how you feel about orbs and things like that, but you can take photos in the pitch dark. Most people, I mean, I've said this several times on the show, most photos come out just black. And then all of a sudden you'll get a few photos that come out with loads of orbs in them,
Oh, absolutely. No, I agree with you. And
or misty shapes and things like that,
Well, yes, Dermot, actually, envisioned through his mirrors in the automobile, something that was so frightening that he had to return to John's flat that was located, at that time in, Rendlesham. And it used to be rather a ghost town. And by the time that John, carted me around to there, I found it extremely interesting just to see the history itself of this town of Rendlesham with all the work the United States Air Force did and then finally abandoned. It's just, in my last trip in 2019, thanks to other good friends, especially John Saunders, who, got me the, I guess, clearance you'd say to be able to see things in Rendlesham that very few people have gotten to see. And that pretty much clinched it for me that obviously whoever these other entities are, and again, John and Dermot have never claimed that they saw other things except what they did claim they've seen. And I respect that because it keeps everything rather dogmatic. to the point, and keeps it objective without speculations. And certainly there have been embellishments and speculations that have encountered there over the time.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, nothing landed at Cable Green. That's a certainty.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's not. It is, but I just find it. I didn't know it was going to be over 60 years of my life of this much involvement, but I'm better for it, and I hope that what I do publish and what goes out will be interesting for all to read, because it definitely came with a lot of cross-referencing and research. One interview was one of John's friends, is Peter Wallnow. He and his son and daughter actually saw something in, I believe it was 1992 or 99, and it was a triangle-shaped craft in an open field, hovering at about 50 feet or so, and they actually watched it for over 10 minutes, and I've got that on a video interview. And Peter is, I knew a good bit more about him. He was very objective, and he and Derek and Gordy and a few others with whom I interviewed, really over the years got a little bit tired of being slipped to Mickey, as the English would say, because of their accountings and their recounting of the events. I found it extremely interesting, and I consider them to be real facts. So, we've mentioned it earlier, David. I will say that as every time I turn around, I'm getting more testimonials coming out of the UK regarding their witness accounts. So it's going into the book, and I'm very much blessed and appreciated with the help so many people have given me over the last few years.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. Would you think it'll be out this year?
Yes, it will. I'm pretty much finished with it. It's putting in some finishing touches. We'll have some grayscale images, of the events that happened since then. I'm talking events that happened like in 95, 1997, 99, 92. And things that Derek gave an excellent interview right there over the Broads, where he had the actual event earlier. These events, John was excellent. We've taken great strides at performing GPS verifications of directions, and John is an expert in that field, and that will also be in the book. So right now it's well over 125,000 words, and it covers a number of subjects.
Wow.
But it will lead off with Rendlesham, my latest article, and then the previous article, and then it'll move into some other accountings that people have given to me over the years.
I should be looking forward to it anyway, Ed. It's, I know that we were talking a little bit before the show, and I'm sure you'll be coming back on the show again a bit later with some other stuff besides Rendlesham, because I know this is going to be probably fill this whole show up about Rendlesham.
Well, David, we've talked a good bit, and I'm honored. I actually humbled that you've taken such an interest, and I certainly would be honored to be here again. And we've always had a very positive relationship, and I like that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think we've always been straight and everything. It's, I think you like me. I hate liars, and I think you feel the same way about it as well. You and
I covered that before. Yes.
But I mean, let's go back into let's have a little bit about your early years, Ed. Did you have any like childhood experiences before we go into? You've come back again to Rendlesham a bit later.
Well, thank you. Sure, I'll be glad to share it. I don't really advertise it, and one of my articles, a little bit of what I've experienced will be in there. Around, of course, I mentioned the event in 1967, near Atlanta, Georgia, and the craft that I saw was over Dobbins Air Force Base, in that region, and it came from actually the direction of the moon, and just came in. That was my interpretation at the time. But the more that I recount this event, it came in most deliberately. I couldn't really tell you how large it was, but it was significant.
Did you get a colour for it, or a sound or anything?
Yes, no sound at all, and it was glowing white. Right. It was Yeah, it just I've seen orange later on.
Yeah, orange. Now, orange I can relate to because that's what I saw.
Yes, I've seen that on one occasion that it actually apparently landed and then took off. And there was a whoosh, and that was about all I saw. But this other craft made numerous zigzags in the air. I just got my gut feeling maybe it came in to as low as maybe 5,000 feet or so. But that's about as close to me as it got. But its intelligent movements were what was so fascinating, that the number of zigzags it made before it went right back out into space from directly from where it came. And it was about 5 to 8 seconds. And, well, it's just not something one can unsee once they've seen it. And later on, with two of my friends in high school, we were wrestling buddies and track buddies, and we were out just driving around one night in these kind of paranormal areas where there had been like this doctor who apparently was a murder-suicide, and his mansion burned down to the ground, and we drove as near to that as we could. And that's when we saw this orange glow, and then it just went whoosh like that, and it was gone. And we just looked at each other, in amazement, going, okay, you can't unsee that either. And then later on, I'd say around 1990, I saw more of a metallic type of round object or elliptical in near Modesto, California. And it was pretty well up there, probably 15,000 feet. And it was hovering. And then it just went like it disappeared. So that's all I can say about that. And then there was a time around 1986 in the LA area that I saw a being that, and this was long before, I guess one would say Men in Black. This being was standing on a street corner, about 7 feet tall, dressed in a suit and a hat. And the construction of the person told me that it just wasn't like a normal human. And so the nearer I got to it, the more I hit my horn, so I can see you. And then that's when I felt the telepathy kind of come in, and it was like this. I just remember, look, I don't want anything to happen, but if you keep making all that racket, something is going to happen. Right. And so I kind of felt like Steamboat Willie and Mickey Mouse. I just started whistling and drove by without making a sound. And that's how taken I was. And it was an uncomfortable feeling, but it was a demonstrative feeling. And I outside of other paranormal events in life, it's one of my more notables. So those are my events. And
do you feel that's a common thing with that they're walking amongst us, for want of a better term?
I believe certainly that they've been walking anywhere they want around us for a long time. In my other research and not religious studies, as we discussed, I'm not religious, but I do have extreme faith. And we've been visited for so long in so many different written formats, from all around the world, that to me, I personally, my own deep logical feeling is, how can anybody deny the existence that we are not alone in the universe? And I really do think that life is teeming out here, and we're the newest kids on the block, and probably we're a lot more dangerous to them than they are to us. I'm sure there are races that may not like us very much, and there are other races that have been protecting us. So,
do you feel that's why they pay us such a lot of attention, because of how dangerous we may be?
Well, in certain ways, they certainly didn't like the nuclear age that was ushered in 1945. But they've been interested in, I feel like it's almost like a non-interference treatise among the planets or the other beings involved. I think there are multiple dimensions, that in the fabric too. I also believe that time travel can be accomplished both forward and backwards. We just don't know how yet. I believe that, yes, we're visited interdimensionally. Another friend of mine who's a physicist, and he's part of the Marriott family. His name is Ron, and he's a great guy. And he discovered, antimatter above storm cells. So there's so much that we have touched on, but there's so little we really know. And to me, I feel very comfortable in just saying, look, deal with the facts, deal with what's in front of you. Don't make something out of nothing. Just read it, do your research, do your homework, and don't spout off on things you don't know anything about.
Yeah, it kind of sums it up.
Yeah, sorry, that's me.
I mean, when you mentioned time travel, there's a theory that whatever it was that landed in Rendlesham Forest could have actually been us from the future. And I think that's kind of Jim Penniston's thoughts on it, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it very well could be. I don't know, and I mean, I really appreciate the fact that he went public about his experiences, as well as did John Burroughs and a few others. I've read a little bit from some good authors over in that period of time. It very well could be interdimensional. It certainly wasn't a lighthouse or campfires or dogs connected to chairs or other things that John and Dermot mentioned.
I mean, this is what Chuck and I we'd laugh about that because UFOs would have been reported all the time, wouldn't they? If it was a lighthouse, I mean, it would have been all over the, it would have been every night, wouldn't it?
David, that's a good point. I have yet to talk to Charles Halt, but I would like to in the future if it's all possible, because I'd love to hear what he has to say. But I would agree. I mean, I've been there at night, in the dead of night. John took me around pretty much everything to Southgate, Utley Gate, Orford, and the other coastal towns nearby. Matter of fact, our first trip, we spent 10 hours in one day nonstop. We didn't even stop for anything to eat or drink, and I offered a number of times. And I had a friend of my father-in-law who went with us and talked. I think that's the closest thing to flying saucers I saw were his eyes as he listened to John and I talk.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you know, but that lighthouse is gone now. It's been pulled down.
Excuse me, I had to get a little bit of water. I apologize.
That's right.
Yes, I saw that when it went down. I read about it. And one of my other little fun parts are the types of windmills that you have in the areas. There was one that I have yet to write about, but it's the Horsey windmill. I was there when that was being reconstructed. Some of the history in England, I just am enamored with the history that's in England. But back to the the Rendlesham situation. John and I, with Dermot, conducted that was an hour and 12-minute interview. As a matter of fact, Dermot lives in Nottingham, and leaving Alton Broad area to go to Nottingham is quite a long journey.
Yeah, it is.
So we met at a lay-by restaurant.
Especially on these British roads.
Yes. Oh, the highways were excellent. Some of the British roads I've traveled, I used to drive in England, and my mother-in-law, God rest her soul, she said, "Oh, you're such a good driver." And I said, "All I'm doing is thinking left, and if I can do that, I can drive." Except when I got into London, that just about messed me up for life. But no, the highways going up and back, we stopped at what they called was an American type of restaurant. So we had Coca-Cola and burgers and fries, and then we conducted the interview outside. And really some of the things that were discussed, and we're talking about showers of sparks, fast-moving jets from the coast, etc. And people they had met and known from like special services, etc. They one of the renditions from the interview that I'm transcribing in the book, and well, it's transcribed. It's just I'm always looking to make sure I correct any errors that I make because I want it to be exactly what was told to me, not anything fabricated or accidentally construed or interpreted that may not have been on task.
Yeah.
At one point, they were all out sky watching, and they saw a elliptical type of white craft that suddenly turned crimson and then shot off into the sky. And they kind of called it like an elongated rugby ball. But that was kind of similar to some of the events reported in Rendlesham originally. And this was in, I believe 1995 or 7. And, without going into, my extensive notes I took. But they did notice that it too would be, a craft that they couldn't explain. It certainly didn't have the nav lights that jets have, etc. And, they saw it zigzagging all around. And so, then they saw sometimes there were jets involved. And finally when the jets approached this craft this one time, they all saw it just disappear off into the clouds very rapidly. So, and the witnesses they gave a lot of detail for, were very interesting as well, that over near Fire Track 10 and of course the end of the runway with runway lights at, the end of, Woodbridge airway, runway, sorry, and near Folly Cottage, we called it. Yeah. Where some people said, some detractors would say it was training for Apollo, recoveries in the North Sea with, helicopters. But, some things just didn't add up. And I've been, like you, David, I've been everywhere I've hiked all through the forest and to the coast and over to Capel Green, etc. But, this one case, the first one he was talking about, they did notice that, again, they wanted to expound on the fact they don't know what it was, but it definitely wasn't one of ours. When the jets got close to it, it took off. And, then that particular night they were worried about a storm coming in, but, subsequently when the craft and the jets and everything else were making their moves, they would hear like large flash booms. It really, the more I went over this again and again, and the more of what their stories have, their not renditions, but exactly what they've told me has never varied from one fact to the other over the last 5 years.
Right. Now, do you feel that some of the stories by some of the prime witnesses have altered over the years? Or do you think it's kind of been a lack of memory? Because 40 years, the memories change and false memories can occur as well.
Well, to be perfectly honest, we are all human that are reporting all this, and to be human is to err. So we can all make mistakes. However, I would consider there had been some embellishments, but also I think a lot of it does have to be, David, inclusive of how good one's memory is over time. So that which was written initially and, put to print early on is probably more, apt to being accurate than those who, witnessed events but never really wrote anything down for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, apparently we can sort of refer to Jim Penniston at that point because he had his notebook. So he says he wrote down a lot of coordinates and took a lot of notes. As he said, it was his normal thing to do. So I guess we can go a lot on Jim Penniston's notes in that instance. And I think probably from Colonel Holt's point of view as well, because he wrote the memo and everything. I'm sure he must have written some other notes out as well. That it's not.
No, they did. And
yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, yeah, sorry. Go on. I was just going to say that it would be a normal thing to do, wouldn't it? Even if it's just for himself.
Absolutely, and I believe that, Lieutenant Colonel at the time, now Colonel Charles Halt, retired, was being transparent to the best of his ability. And from what I've read and what he has stated, I don't think he would have any other agenda. In that regard. No,
I don't believe so. I mean, I don't believe his story's changed over the years that much. He's even admitted to me. He said his recollections of the exact night were 40 years ago. So, your memories do fade, and there's been sort of like even the actual landing sites and everything seem to have changed a little bit. I mean, we've actually got a monument in the woods, which is not where the landing site was. Yeah.
Correct.
You know, and then there's been a little bit of an anomaly where, well, that's not where you told me it landed before, that type of thing, you know. So, I mean, and you got also remember, I mean, this all happened in the dead of night. And trying to,
Yes.
I mean, you know what it's like in the woods in the night. I mean, to try and remember exactly where you walked, I would have thought, yeah, and, you know, to an exact spot in the woods to find it again, I think would be very difficult anyway.
I think there's another factor that we could take a look at, David. That would be that some things that we initially saw, like say my first experience, like what Charles Halt saw, what Jim Penniston experienced, what John Burroughs saw. I think in some cases, as the years pass, we actually recall it more clearly. Much than the opposite, because it had such an effect on us. And sometimes, you know, it's like some of our friends, that are hypnotists and all, you may not know until you actually have undergone a form of hypnotism, but some things may be, hidden from your conscious, memory until even years later. And then bam, it hits you straight away. I've had that happen with some of the case studies where, you know, they said, well, no, this is what I remember clear as day now. And then it would take me a few more months just to cross-reference and to verify that there were no disparities in the report.
Yeah. I mean, the way I was kind of thinking of it, I mean, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but I've thought about places where I've been and I've not been there for many years, and you build up a picture of something in your mind and then you go there and it's not how you remember it. You know, that's kind of where I was thinking. And you think, well, that's not really how I remembered it at all. You know.
Well, I would agree. I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, you know, it's not just as we grew up. Like when we revisit a place where we were kids, the houses tended to get smaller and the trees got bigger, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, but I think, you know, the accountings, and I, if I may, I can go into a little bit more of some of these witnesses' accounts. Okay. Further on, during our interview with John and Dermot, I mean, there was the next that there was a gentleman they knew called, his nickname was Pegleg, and he was actually a veteran of the Gulf War in Iraq and had lost his leg. So these skywatchers and others, they would be in different locations, but they would see much the same thing. And Pegleg's recounting of what they saw with apparently some sort of engagement between jets and this other crafts in the air, where they saw actually like white flashes of, you know, lights heading into the sky, which Pegleg would say that looks just like, you know, missiles that were flying around in Baghdad. And but they had a hard time explaining the amber beams that were coming back down. And then suddenly there would be like, you know, large sparks and, you know, like a corona of a type of flash boom explosion that was happening. And there were over 14 people that witnessed all this. One case in particular, when John was going back to his car near the BT area, British Telecom, not the main building, but it was another location just outside of Bentwaters.
Is Martlesham, is that the way?
Yes, exactly. And he saw a creature there. Well, he didn't, but others said, John, did you see what just passed behind your car? And they had noted that there was an odd kind of chemical type of smell that was almost like, to lack of better words to say, strawberry candy floss. And the ones who saw at different locations in the area actually witnessed and stated the same type of being as being more like a praying mantis type of being around 3 or 4 feet tall. And that was not once, but 2 different locations, and one, two, you know, being near Fire Trap 10.
I did, so a little shiver went down my spine when you said that, because I've heard that description myself.
Well, the shiver was well taken, David, because when Dermot, as I was using my, you know, tablet to conduct the audio interview, his hair stood up on his arms. And this gentleman has been a very dear friend of John's for years and years. They're just like brothers in arms, and had been interviewed by newspapers in the past. You can see how frightened he was years later by recounting this event. And it was one night where he saw a being that was almost like one would say like a two-dimensional etch of an upside-down triangle with like dangling arms at each edge of the triangle with scurrying little legs. It'd be, like something that he reported very similar to those who know about the Popeye comic and Popeye video series in the late 50s, early 60s.
Should we admit that? No, I don't know.
Oh, no. Well, one of the characters in it was known as Alice the Goon. And she was a tall, lanky figure. And that's what Dermot said this creature looked like. And he had about a 30-mile trip to go home. And he decided, John's flat is just up the road. And he came and drove right back to where John was living, in the Rendlesham area. And I've seen his flat. I saw the apartment where he lived. And when John had already gone to sleep and, Dermot starts knocking on the door as hard as he could, let me in. And he was white as a ghost. And so he, told John what he had experienced. He was in his automobile and was seeing this creature through the mirrors, all three mirrors. And so at one point he tried to turn the vehicle around with his high beams and the creature was gone. Since that time, we've kind of thought maybe that was one of the interdimensional experiences. But that shiver you felt, that's what we all felt. And when that will also be in audio, and we're going to try to, in the future, tie that into a video rendition with backup pictures. And they even spoke of a certain light. It was like a security light. And I've been there. It's a little bit off, the grassy area of the corner of the road. But they would even bring family members and others that every time Dermot and John would drive by this light, it would turn off. Now, I guess you'd call that a little bit paranormal, but it happened a number of times. I didn't see it go on and off. It was off because we were there during the day, and we were running GPS measurements. That's one of the things that we hope is really going to be helpful in the book, that we're doing our best to verify and triangulate from where these craft came and to where they were going. And the experiences are, without the time that we have here today, I will guarantee you there are more events that they encountered that were extraordinary, in my personal opinion. But the fact that they also noted there was Dermot really thought it was kind of a foodie smell, but maybe more like burnt toast. But then later he noticed that strange candy floss type of what we would call cotton candy in America. And then there was a gentleman, I believe, named Richard Conway, and mentioned about a Scottish person who had, had an experience, and it was in a UFO magazine from Scotland, and he had the exact same experience with the same type of strawberry candy floss smell. And we found that to be, quite interesting to be so many miles away and then, having the same type of thing happen. So there were more experiences that were reported by, each of these sky watchers. And I just want to carry on one thing. Dermot Curran is 6'3", and he is a professional in law enforcement. And I will tell you, he's not a small guy. And when I saw the hair stand up on his forearms, I was like, whoa. So, you can't make that stuff up, David.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So, well, moving along, we thought, we also, they called some of the event that Dermot had with this kind of two-dimensional being was almost like, also kind of like something of special effects out of Ghostbusters. But, it frightened him terribly. And, had it not been for during the interview that I'd seen his galvanic responses, I would have said, okay, I'll accept it. and how can we verify, but I got to see it and experience it. So, those things are just some of the events that occurred over the years. I'll go back too with, I forget, his last name, but part of John's friends, they're all, together in social activities. And when I had the interview with Derek, and unfortunately the audio of it, the video was great, but the audio was a little bit on the windy side, so it's not the best quality. But he gave an excellent interview of the craft he saw from across the Broads, and I'm not far from Ipswich, but it was another area that had railroad tracks, etc., that were looking really interesting. He pointed to the sky where he saw this large craft. He said it was definitely large, and it was a glowing white craft too. And it was like slowly moving as he looked over the water, and it was getting to be about time to go home. As he watched the craft, it suddenly just shot off within a second, and we considered the best analogy we could give was somewhere between 0 to 5,000 miles per hour in less than a second. And it whooshed and disappeared over the tree line in the opposite direction. And we triangulated that as well with GPS, and we have some very interesting results that will be in the book. So the next event, I actually interviewed another witness friend of John's, Gordy Gujar, very down-to-earth fellow.
Yeah, I know Gordy.
And,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, great guy. And I had a chance to interview with him as well, right there at the parking facility that they now have at Rensselaer, just at the corner of Woodbridge, the runway.
Yeah.
Just across the street from Fire Track 10 if you walk down towards Capel Green. So Gordy had some good experiences to explain too, and some of the places that John took me where events occurred from World War II all the way to later times were just incredible. I mean, I was truly moved. So since that time, we have developed everything and nailed it down, so to speak. And when it comes out, I certainly will let you know firsthand. And I would say that one of my more moving interviews too was with Peter Wanow, with his son and daughter. His daughter has already given another testimonial of what she observed, and when they observed that triangle craft, and it had like a yellowish light at the bottom in the center, and it didn't have any nav lights on it, but it hovered over this fallow field for over 10 minutes. They just stopped the car and watched it. And then suddenly it went whoosh, without a sound. It flew right overhead and disappeared off into the distance. And that was about a 10-minute interview, or 15 minutes to be exact. Those were parts of the interviews that we conducted, especially in 2019. I'm always going to be interested in it. Every time I go back to England, I find it actually, in some ways, I find it even more amazing than Roswell, where they had the suspected craft that crashed in July of 1947.
I think probably because we're closer to it, aren't we? Because in age-wise, I mean, we've been around in the time when it happened. Probably with Roswell, it's kind of a little bit historical, and we weren't around at that time. Well, I wasn't anyway.
Well, that's very true. But like I agree, the friends that I've had, that a good friend of mine, Norio Hayakawa, who's written extensively, and probably in the 1990s, I'm sure you've heard of him. He was one of the best ufologists out there. And he's, he contributes to the groups in Facebook too on Universal Digest, and I'm very blessed.
Yeah. Actually, I think Donald Smith's just got a new book out about Roswell, hasn't he, I believe?
I believe so. I can't be quoted on that.
I think I saw it earlier that or someone put it up on Facebook. I'm pretty sure Don Smith. I think it's written with somebody else as well. I'll have to have a little look into that.
Well, I've also listened to Jesse Marcel, who's the grandson of the original, and he's carried on a good family tradition based on facts and what he learned, notwithstanding what Jesse's son learned. And so it's very interesting. But bottom line is, David, we're not alone. I mean,
absolutely.
To think that, and the bad news is that, tell me if you agree or disagree, but I still think 50% of the people would freak out if they were given disclosure up front and personal.
Yeah, I'm a bit, I don't know. I think I think you can only judge yourself by that. I mean, I know I wouldn't freak out. I think I'd be amazed if they actually come out and admitted it. Said that we, although in a way though, Ed, you might see if you agree with me. I think they have actually released a lot of information and it's buried there. If you look for it and, in amongst those thousands and thousands of pages they've released, a lot of information is there.
Well, a lot has definitely been declassified, and I did some writing regarding Nick Pope and Peter Robbins since the time, and a lot of the work that Nick did with the MOD, and there's a lot that has been released here in the States. You had, I believe, Harry Reid, one of the senators, is very much involved in disclosure. I've met on social media with Steve Bassett, and I think very positively of him as well. That Bigelow Aerospace in Las Vegas with Robert Bigelow, that happened with Lou Elizondo and others. There's been a lot that has been reported, both in video and audio since that time. How well is it being received by most people? I hate to sound this way, but I still think, although there's so many of us out there, there's so many people that don't really care to be bothered with it.
No, I agree with you in some ways, I think, but if it was actually, if it suddenly became headline news that there are aliens, they are visiting us, I don't think it would bother that many people, to be honest. They might turn around and think, oh, so there are aliens after all. I don't think people would be running in fear. Like we were supposed to be. Oh, we're all going to die. And I don't think it would happen that way.
No, I don't either. I mean, well, to me, the human condition is like this, and that I've written about extensively, is give it about 2 weeks. Okay, here are the facts. Here are our friends from, Epsilon or India or wherever, whether they're Greys or Nordics or whomever, or who expound on how many different races there are among us. Here are the facts. This is what we are. 2 weeks later, people will be going right back to what they were doing before.
Yeah. It's
TV, six-pack, and okay. Hey, we know we're not alone. Sounds good. Okay, I got to go.
It would no longer be science fiction,
No. and still, for science fiction, but science fact is normally what science fiction turns into. David.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I still wonder if it will ever happen. I mean, what's your opinion? Do you think it'll ever? They'll ever actually come out and say anything? I don't really. I mean,
that's a great question, David. Firmly, my answers recently, and even more recently to those, I said it's already happened. It's already been reported, witnessed for hundreds and thousands of years. It's right there in front of us. Do a little bit of reading, do a little bit of homework, and you'll find that what I'm saying is true.
Yeah, I think
that's how
it's like seek and you shall find type of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And even when we mentioned, Albert Einstein did prove that time is mutable in space and time. So at least that's a start. My latest feeling, and I'll share it here for the public, is that I believe that time travel, both forward and backward, is as real as it can be. And for that matter, I think for the most part, we are saved because of it, because who would want to destroy time and space?
Yeah.
Well, there's one at the corner for you.
I mean, the thing about time travel gets me is, but if you actually go back in time, you're changing time straight away just by going back there.
There's all these different viewpoints. I have a good book about the physics of it, and the Alcubierre model of that scientist that has shown now that we can, and in my studies, we already have the ability to have faster than light travel. The unfortunate part is we do not have a vessel that is capable of withstanding the stress of it. That's where we are now. And the Alcubierre model shows that we can technically travel forward in time. Even Army experiments in the past with missiles with clocks on them, etc., shows a dilation of time related to the speed that an object travels.
Sure, yeah.
They've also verified that with experimentation with the space station itself, with NASA. So
yeah, with space travel itself, they've come back with the time is altered, isn't it? Yeah, I agree. So
yeah, I think as time passes, in some, David, I believe that we'll continue to learn more. Everything is going to be fine. There's always cyclic situations that occur in civilization. Some may not be very good. Some will be. We need to look at the history of the planet Earth that we live. And to me, climates are cyclic. And to think that we humans can actually change Earth right now, I'd say is really not totally true.
I mean, we certainly need some good news, I think, on this planet, the way things are going.
It's very true. Well, David, I can't say enough that, yes, Rendlesham has been now a lifelong favorite for me, and it's real as rain. There have been a lot of good writings conducted, a lot of good witness accounts. There have been some of the changes over the years of where we thought something was when it's not. But, I saw what do you call it in England, the fire conservatory or conservation group that made those monuments, right? The Forestry Commission. Is that what you mean? Yes, thank you, Forestry Commission.
Yeah, I think that was, I can't think what the price of it was. Was it £150,000 or something? That was just a grab out of the air, but I'm not quite sure how much it did cost. But they raised the money for it. But unfortunately, like you do with these things, people climb all over it and write all over it and scratch it, and they just get ruined, don't they? They should have really fenced it off or something.
I couldn't agree more. I saw it personally myself, and I saw where they were really trying hard to keep things pristine, but especially that facsimile of the craft. Where they wrote some of the most amazing stuff on the sides of that craft. Yeah. Okay, well, that's where I'd stop.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing because it was nice when it first was put there, but I think that they're fighting a losing battle trying to keep it clean and painted and everything. But there you go. But then again, as we said, it's been put in not where the occurrence happened anyway, the landing happened. I think they've just found like a convenient hill and just put it on it, kind of thing.
Well, what can I say? I was a spectator then, and I guess I am after the fact now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully you'll come back to England again when we can all travel again sometime, and it'll be great to meet up, and we can all go for a trip up to Rendlesham.
Well, David, I would really look forward to that. I don't think this is a good year, but
well, you never know. Yeah, hopefully what's it now? 2022 maybe.
Yes, that's what I'm aiming for, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to get Colonel Holt back over here again at some point, if he's willing to come and if he's well enough to come. Obviously, he's 81 now this year. So, does he really want to keep travelling? I don't know. I mean, when he came back last time, you kind of think, oh, maybe this is the last time he'll come or want to come, It's it's just one of those things. We're all getting older, and there comes a time when you think, I just don't want to do that travelling anymore.
Well, that too, with when you drop something, and when you were younger, you just bent over and picked it up, and now we kind of look at it for a little while and saying, is it really worth the trouble?
Yeah, I know that feeling well over the last couple of weeks, I'll tell you. But, anyway, Ed, it's been fantastic having you on the show. As I said, I hope you'll come back on again and tell us, because we've obviously got many more subjects we could cover. Rendlesham is just a very small part of your repertoire, although it's a very important one. And I should certainly look forward to the book when it comes out.
Certainly. Thank you so much, David, and I really look forward to coming back on your show. Also, meeting you in person finally. All things are possible. Who knows what tomorrow brings? But it certainly has been a pleasure to be on here. As soon as the Universal Digest anthology is published, I will let you know immediately. And it's like I said, it's been 5 years in the making, and well, it's been a labor of love. I'll tell you.
Well, you'll have to come over and sign my copy for me anyway. So
absolutely. David. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show.
No, it's been great, Ed. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. And we're not, we're friends, and we're not strangers anymore. So, please stay in touch, and hopefully we'll get to meet sometime. And I'll certainly invite you back onto the show again. Yeah, great.
Well, David, you've been a good friend for the years that we've gone through a little bit together, and I've really appreciated your countenance, your transparency, and your friendship.
Thank you very much. It's mutual respect, I think, is the words we're looking for.
And it's always earned, but yes, you've definitely, I respect you very much.
And you, I do too. Thank you, Ed. Anyway, then, I'll let you go, because it's, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1:30 for you?
Yes, it's pretty much the middle of the day. It's a sunlit day and a little bit on the cool side. And I do continue on with the projects, and I think, you and I both say that in some ways, shape, or form, we do have a life, so we will continue on with
Absolutely. Yeah, it's creeping towards my bedtime. It's 20 to 10 here now, so...
That's right. Oh, wow. Certainly let you go, my friend.
You too. You take care of yourself, Ed, and thanks again. Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye. Right, you've been listening to Paranormal Dimensions. I'm David Young on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I hope you enjoyed that. I did. Thank you. And hope to hear you again, see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Paranormal Dimensions is as bright and powerful as our celestial star, the sun. And although it's expending thousands of pounds of energy every minute of the day, have no fear. There's plenty left.
Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.